We're here today just to have a bit of a chat amongst ourselves and explain to people about ISFs. There's, particularly in Essex, it's fairly new and starting to get going. I thought it'd be great to get you guys on a call just so we can have a bit of a chat and share with people around what ISFs are. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi there. My name's Alex Goff. I'm a service manager and director for Darwin Care. We're based down in Dorset. I also work with Chris Watson, who's also on the call, with Self-Directed Futures, and we work to help local authorities and providers embed ISFs.
Okay, Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris Watson from Self-Directed Futures, also the chair of the STS Network England, and used to work with Alex. I used to work in commissioning for Dorset Council. So I've known Alex for quite a long time, and previous to that I worked in supported living services and spent some time working in NHS inpatient settings as well, mainly with people with learning disabilities and autistic people. And that's what sort of sparked my interest in deinstitutionalisation and anything to do with personalising support, so making stuff much more bespoke.
Brilliant. I'll introduce myself. So I'm Andrew Denny, Director of Independence Project. We're a day opportunities provider in Essex. We also work with children. We've got a short breaks contract within Essex as well as part of a wider organisation called Send Sensation, supporting lots of young people with additional needs and adults. We're about to open a second centre for people with profound and multiple learning difficulties and high medical needs. That should be opening, hoping before Christmas, but we're getting our way through with that. We're also a individual service fund holder as well, so we support our members through that, and that's really the main purpose of this meeting and discussion is around ISFs. So that's brilliant. So perhaps I could kick off. Chris, could you perhaps explain to us why ISFs came about, the history, sort of the Care Act, where it will come from?
Yeah, sure. So the organisation that pioneered ISFs, I think, initially was up in Scotland. So Scotland have got a really good track record of closing institutions and creating personalised, sort of service and support arrangements. And there was an organisation called Inclusion Glasgow, and so two of the sort of my gurus in life work for Inclusion Glasgow. So that's Dorian Kelly and Simon Duffy, and they basically pioneered individual service funds in the 90s as part of a programme to resettle people with learning disabilities and autistic people out of inpatient hospital units into the community. And I think they felt probably frustrated with the inefficiency of the commissioning systems, and it was very much time and task. And they had, but they also had really big budgets for people. And I think they basically opportunity spotted a potential to be more effective with the use of those funds in terms of delivering what people wanted in terms of support, but also kind of right size the budget amount as well for people in a way that had never been done before. And I understand that at that point in time, there was no legislation to support individual service funds. There was no commissioning, contracting architecture to support it at all. They effectively decided to pioneer it on their own. And obviously over time, I think commissioners understood what they were doing and kind of got wind of it. And that was the sort of the embryonic kind of start point of individual service funds. But it took another 20 years for that to get locked into legislation, interestingly enough. So
yeah. I guess this for people watching this video, it's easy for us to start going into sort of jargon speak and talk and get caught into that. So for parents, it's essentially an ISF is another way of managing a fund, isn't it? Managing a personal budget that people receive either through social care, or the alternative is third-party budgets through continuing healthcare plans and the NHS, which we'll come on to. I think we'll have a chat about that in a bit, but maybe Alex, you could perhaps explain to us the benefits and maybe the other alternatives to an ISF, or how do you manage a personal budget? Perhaps you could explain that.
Well, we've been managing ISFs for 9 years now, so we've got lots of test and learn from that. And the core of an individual service fund is to make it really personalized. So it's where we as an organization, Darwin Care, are able to enable that person to lead on their care and support. ISFs really incorporate the circle of support that somebody has. So if we're talking about parents, you know, parents have had to probably throughout the lifetime of their son or daughter fight for every little pound and penny of care and support. But what ISFs do is kind of balance out the whole process a little bit more. It takes that big step forward towards the independence and a step back away from that control through the local authority or whichever funding authority it is. With that partnership then leads to all of the wider benefits of, you know, actually thinking about how can we help this person do more. So the benefits are huge. It is quite a radical process if you consider, generally speaking, most people only really get offered a fully commissioned package, something that is basically you're told that's what you're getting and that's that. So when we start throwing in the different ideas of self-directed support pathways, that can be an individual service fund or a direct payment, even more independence with a direct payment where they can fully lead themselves. But with an ISF, you then have all of the provider's experience and knowledge and skills to help everybody else on that journey to get the best possible care and support.
Definitely.
There's very different pathways there.
I think it's also worthwhile sort of mentioning that you know you said about people with personal budgets being sort of fully in control of what they're doing, but I don't always think that that's quite the case, because obviously that gets tied back to how the care plan was written for that individual, or the individual support plan was written for that individual. And obviously, I'm sure you're at Darwin, you'll be the same as we are at Independence Projects. Things often change, you know, and services drop off, or PAs that they might have had working with them that aren't around anymore. So things often change. And some of the problems that parents we certainly talk to find is something changing the plan, and then what do they do? How do they do that? You know, they've got to get that care plan changed. And as we all know, you know, social services in general, social workers, there is a shortage across the country. I think it's a massive strain that they're under, and therefore people are waiting for sometimes months to get in touch with a social worker and to get those plans updated, to get things changed. And, you know, technically speaking, if they haven't got that changed or on that plan, they can't spend the money in the way that they want to. So I think one of the big benefits of having an individual service fund is the ability to then be able to flex and change to the individual, meet their needs, and as you say, be creative. Like, you know, you can really be creative and think outside the box. I'm sure you've probably got some examples, Alex, of different things that you might have done with ISFs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about looking at that person, their strengths, their wants and wishes, and thinking, okay, you know, these are the building blocks of what we can then start thinking and put forward as ideas. We've had some really good examples of people just quite simply choosing to not go with a support worker to the gym and do a workout, to having a personal trainer deliver that. And that's us recognizing that we aren't the best people to support with that health benefit to doing that. And actually, if we do our part to help them, get them involved in a gym, build those relationships with the instructors and the people around there, then we can take that step back. And that's really powerful. It's also recognizing that actually, as a provider, we don't need to gobble up all of the money. And actually, there are other organizations out there that can also benefit. You then get that community involvement as well, don't you?
You do, yeah.
You know, the individual purchases specific things to help them.
Yeah, I mean, we've got an example at the moment of again thinking creatively. I mean, and it goes back to kind of what Chris was saying about the ISF not being so reliant on time-based care. It's more about outcomes, you know, and that's the important thing, I think, with ISFs, is about how do we improve each individual's life? What do they want to work towards? What do they want to achieve? And for example, one of the ISFs that we've recently managed, is a young lad that was having some difficulties at home. His mum was struggling to support him, was looking to move away, and through that we've been able to get him to initially learn how to clean and cook in the home. He wasn't able to look after his home when he's independently. His mum had actually moved out of the property as well, so he was left on his own. Social care team came to us and said, look, can we get this set up? So we got PAs to go in, help him learn all of those skills. Then from that, the next step was actually that we were getting him to move out of the home because his parents were due to move away. So he's now living in supported living. We managed to get him into a living scheme. That's going really well. The next step and wish that he wanted was to pass his driving test. So PAs have now switched and they're now teaching him to go through his theory test. Sadly, he failed his first theory test, but last Friday he just passed it. So he passed his theory test. Now what we're looking to, and we've spoken to commissioners and said, well, the next step is, can we get, rather than PA time working with him, could we potentially look at funding some of his driving lessons? Because this is something that he wants to do. We've been given the okay to go ahead and do that. So again, it's about thinking outside of the box of how can we help achieve the best for this individual. And actually, I fully expect probably in 6 months' time to a year, we probably won't even be working with this individual because he will be up and running, and we're supporting him with things like looking to get him into employment. He's actually off at a job fair today. We were going through his CVs yesterday and doing these sorts of things with him, and these are the kind of flexibilities that you can have with an ISF that you don't get traditionally in the other sort of models or thinking outside of the box, which one of the main reasons why I wanted to get involved was that. And some of the frustrations that I hear from parents at times around managing their budgets, it becomes a challenge. And because we as providers are really well connected in our communities, we can reach out to different organisations, different people, pull things together, and create a community around each individual, working towards their goals. So other examples we've done recently, we regularly attend boxing sessions at boxing gyms. So there's a number of our guys that are interested in that. They now access those services outside of our sessions, and they go down themselves because of our involvement. The gym's got to know them and they're able to manage them, so they're not having to spend out on PAs. They're going to collectively as a group to be able to attend those sessions. So there's lots of different examples of the flexibility on how ISFs can help people. But yeah, Chris, have you got any examples that stick in your mind of how good ISFs have worked?
I guess a lot of my frustration, because obviously I'm spend a lot of time in commissioning and listening to families and people, was that obviously the social work system is geared up towards setting stuff up at time and task level, so you get X number of hours and that's what you get. And obviously, and the idea is that then social work reviews happen every 12 months and changes are made then. But we know in reality, with the pressure on social work system, all that kind of stuff, that reviews, for some of the people that I was kind of in charge of looking after, people hadn't had reviews for 4 or 5 years. So, and we all, our lives are different, every couple of weeks, let alone every 4 or 5 years. So for me, there's an inherent frustration with the current system. And the way it's baked in terms of that time and task stuff. So the ISFs for me were just this opportunity to put the person, family, social support at the centre of decision making around the use of that budget and to be able to flex it as required around the person. So the first ISF that we had in Dorset was a lady called Bev. She's happy for me to share her story actually. And she was in an inpatient mental health unit and came out, and she just was quite anxious at night. And so what we would have commissioned if it had been traditional package would have been 7 nights of having a sleeping worker come and stay overnight in her flat with her. And that would have probably run on for a year, probably maybe 2 or 3, who knows, depending on when we would have got back to do the review. But actually, Bev didn't want a sleeping worker with her every night. What she wanted was to have a sleeping worker when she needed one, when she felt more anxious. So we found a support organisation that held her ISF for her that could work flexibly. And she would have a conversation with them every day about whether that night she felt like she was able to sleep on her own, whether she had a partner coming over and she was okay, or whether she would like a worker to come over and do the sleeping. Now the provider had to be very flexible around that, and she was lucky that we had a great provider that did that work. But so that went on, and over the course of a year, she just used the sleeping whenever she felt like it. So she had the reassurance of knowing that the money was there, nobody was going to take it away if she didn't use it. And then I spoke to the organisation that supports her now, and she's fully independent. But I think if we hadn't used an ISF, we'd have created dependency. She'd have become dependent on the sleep-ins, and everybody would have accepted that's what she needed. And I suspect she still has sleep-ins now, but she's much happier. She's much more independent. And the whole thing for me was like, it's that reassurance. I talked to a lot of families, and what they're very worried of is with direct payments is giving money back to the council, and then they lose that from their pot permanently.
Yeah.
But the beauty of the ISF, I think, for them was that it was a contingency, and it was always there for her for as long as she needed it, and she knew that, and she had the reassurance of knowing that. So I think that's part of the impact of this, is people just being able to know that they've got the support there if they need it.
That's it, and it's also, I think it's about as you say, being flexible, and with that comes savings in the funds. And there's examples of, like you described there, not needing it all the time. Well, if you're managing that budget, you don't have to be allocating that money, so it sits in the pot that then can be used for other stuff. Some of the examples that we've got at the moment of some of the ISFs that we work with, they might be awarded PA hours, or they would have been awarded PA hours, but actually they're making a decision that they don't necessarily want all of those PA hours, and they're making a saving. And from that, we can then use it for our alternatives. So we've just taken a group of young adults away to Disneyland in Paris. We come back this weekend. So some of their ISF funds would have been used, or money that they've saved, to take them away on a holiday, which is obviously having a much more impact for them as an individual. They're learning life skills. They're becoming more independent away from their families. And these are the things that often I hear, parents want to work towards. There's also the added element of parents are often obviously conscious that they're getting older. They're not going to be around forever. So having that other provider or someone that works for their individual there to help and manage that fund gives them another level of distance, and saying, well, actually, it's your choice. You can choose, and through the support that we put in place, we help them choose how they want to spend their budget, rather than them being told how they spend their budget. So it's a big difference, I think. So just going back, so I said earlier about third-party budgets. Essentially, Chris, do you want to explain further about third-party budgets and what they are?
Yeah, so essentially the NHS has created a mirror of what local authorities can offer. So but there's a lot of terminology and jargon that gets used that can be quite confusing for people. So if you strip it back to legislation, you can have local authority direct payments, and you can have NHS direct payments, and they're called, but the NHS is called personal health budgets, the local authority is called personal budgets. And then if you want this midpoint option where you have an organisation hold your funds for you, if it's local authority, we call it an individual service fund. The NHS called it a third-party personal health budget, and then I've recently added brackets, individual service fund, to it to make the longest title of anything I've ever found. But it's essentially the same thing. But it's for people whose funding primarily comes from the NHS. So it usually includes people that are continuing healthcare funded, or people who come out under the Mental Health Act under Section 117. They have a right to ask for that. So if you have health funding, you're able to ask for a third-party personal health budget, which is an individual service fund. So,
and I think that's important. And what you said there as well, Chris, is hit on something that you're entitled to ask for this. I think sometimes, certainly, we come across that not always being the case when social workers go out and speak to people. That sometimes the information isn't always out there, or people aren't fully aware of how you can manage your budget or what you can do with it. And there is this other option of an ISF or a third-party budget. So I think it's about educating people, making sure that if that's something that ticks their boxes and works for them, it doesn't work for everyone. I mean, we've got lots of people that we support that it's not right for them. It's not suitable for them. They don't require that level of flexibility, and they're quite happy with how things are going with a managed service through the council. So I think it's important to just highlight that as well. So yeah, I mean, we're just touching, if we talk about what we're doing in Essex, we're just touching on third-party budgets at the moment, and we're hopeful. I'm in discussions at the minute with the continuing healthcare team around. We've got a couple of young people that we're looking to get over, and I actually think, you know, some of these people that have got really complex health needs and complex care needs around them, that this sort of system can really benefit them, because when you get in and you listen to the problems that they've got with maybe some of the domiciliary care companies that they've got supporting them, and the issues that they've got around there, and actually having this gives you a much more level of flexibility and creativity to think outside and go, well, actually, do you need to, what about this option, or what about that? And it's working with them and trying to improve those. So I do think that the complex cases, ISFs and third party budgets, can really, you know, open up doors, and make things better in the long run. So yeah, I mean, perhaps if I just ask Alex, but why do you think, whilst we're on that, why do you think people would choose an ISF? What would be the sort of person that might choose an ISF?
I think it particularly falls really nicely with younger individuals that, you know, have that ambition to do more. So it's, if we're talking of somebody who's received care and support for maybe 20-30 years of their lives, it's that institutionalization of it and not knowing. And if you're not given the right information, it limits your options, doesn't it? So then the fear of change comes in. So the people that have had delivery of a care and support in a set way, it's harder for those people to see. So the best way for them to see the value of it is to see others taking up that opportunity. There could be their friends or whatever, and go, oh wow, actually I'd quite like to be given that opportunity. But what we find with the service that we offer is that really hitting the younger, you know, the working age adult, really is the key area where people can just see, because of the health and social care as it is, the Care Act coming in and setting down some fundamentals. There are still lots of changes needed within the sector, but it gives that really good legislation, because I think it's like previously we're talking about 40 years of not any real clear positive change in legislation. So the Care Act is, we've got to recognize that this has helped young individuals, maybe, you know, moving through children's services transitions, adulthood, they're reaping benefits of this. So that's when we need to enthuse those people.
No, completely agree. I think that's certainly what we see as well. I do think it does tend to work better with people that are coming through something new, is putting it into their system, keeping it seems to work better with that sort of cohort of person. But yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think the other thing I wanted to sort of touch on is perhaps where you guys see this going. Where do you see ISFs? Where would you like to see it going in the future?
Chris?
Well, I guess, you know, from a commissioning perspective, what I'd love to see is that it becomes, so for me, I think direct payments are still the best option for people. Just to be really clear, in terms of choice and control, you should, with a direct payment, be able to have, you know, complete autonomy over how you use that budget. But for people who don't want a direct payment, or perhaps don't want to hassle managing PAs, or don't want to hassle managing, or can't potentially manage it because they've been assessed as not having capacity to manage it, I'd love to see people have individual service funds as the next offer down. So like that almost becoming the second option after direct payments. And I'd love to see it across the country. So we want, you know, our vision, I guess, collectively, Self-Directed Futures, the SDS network, which Alex is part of, we believe that every single council in England should be offering individual service funds. We know that they don't all offer individual service funds. So we're on a mission to basically demystify individual service funds, provide support to those councils. I'd love it if every single council in England had an individual service fund offer. Realistically, probably within the next 3 to 5 years, just given how slow everything is. But that's kind of our dream, and that people just feel that they have that option available to them locally.
Well, what about you, Alex?
Well, I'd like to see, well, particularly in Essex, all the good work that you're doing. Absolutely. What I'm hoping to create with the Self-Directed Support Network England for providers as well, a platform where we can all come together and share good practice and inspire each other, so that we then get working alongside what Chris is saying, every local authority to offer an individual service fund. But what else do you need? You need organisations willing and wanting to deliver and be an ISF holder as well. So they come hand in hand, really, because I know the well, I use the word, the appetite for individuals to take control is there, but actually the limitation is the choice that they have of providers willing to do it and local authorities offering it. But I wanted to throw in something that can be a little bit controversial, and we touched on it earlier with social workers and, you know, the immense amount of work pressures they have and all the red tape that comes around that. I think with practitioners that there needs to be a recognition that you cannot control every part of this process, and if you allow providers to come in and be more collaborative and allow and increase understanding of the pathways, so internal pathways of well, how do we offer it? Chris, you mentioned actually the goal should be direct payments, then looking at ISS, then commissioned packages if all else fails. But at the moment it's still working in the complete opposite way.
It's the other way around. So
it's a learning, a training need for practitioners as well. And if we can connect to that, then that will massively help.
Definitely. I think it's you know, just talking about the appetite for organisations, you know, and whether they want to get involved with it. I mean, for us, certainly in Essex, I mean, you know, I think Chris, you've gone further and said in England, but I mean, I know certainly in Essex, I think we're still the only day opportunities provider doing this, and it doesn't spread out. I think that's quite the same across the country, isn't it? Because very, very few, if not probably us being the only day opportunity provider out there doing this. But for me personally, I struggle to see why people don't want to get involved with it, because I think it you know, if you're working closely with the people that you support and you want to help them and you want to, you know, give them choice and control over what they do, then for me it's a no-brainer. There is, you know, there are complexities with it, and there is obviously added pressures and things that come with it, but being able to give that opportunity to people you support, for me is really powerful, and it goes back further than that, because it helps with the stresses and the pressures that their families may face as well, you know, and it's supporting that individual to live their best life. So that's really why I wanted to get involved. But I think it's also, I'd like to see it expanded out, and I'd like to, with our other services that we're doing, we're working with children, you know, why couldn't we look at pushing that down into children's services? Again, at the moment, I don't think it's really happening in Essex. I think it's something that may come in the future. I think it will naturally progress to that as it becomes more aware and people understand it more. I think the questions will start to come back and say, well, why can't we have this, you know? And it's about finding that. And I think, you know, we're really lucky because we've got amazing support from the commissioners in Essex, and they genuinely are really good, and they get it. But they've got it's like you're changing a bit of a mindset, so you've got to get everyone on board, and that takes time, but that'll only come from people like me and you guys sharing the good stories and the good things that can happen from them, and what difference they can make. And hopefully if people are watching this, they'll be able to take away from that and understand a lot more. So yeah, I think some of the other examples I wanted to just touch on quickly as well, like we've been dealing with some really complex cases as well. So I've had individuals that you know, one particular individual, I won't share names, but social care team came to us that didn't really know what to do with her. She's incredibly vulnerable, has gone down the wrong track, has got involved with drugs, and different things that have gone on there, is becoming alienated from parents, and has just stopped engaging with all services. So through an ISF, we've been able to get a PA to almost act as like a mentor, a buddy, to get them back and try and get them back on track, and do things. But again, like how outside of regular commissioning and regular work, it would be really difficult to reach out to someone like that. But through the ISF and building those relationships, it's helped. So it does kind of touch on all sorts of bases. So I think perhaps if we one of the things I think, if we could talk about reassurances to people, we use a system called virtual wallets. I know that Alex also uses that. So when we talk about managing people's money, we're not physically got the money in our bank accounts. It's sitting in a FSA regulated account through managed systems, and people have access, certainly over the virtual wallets, to go in and view how their budgets are being spent. So there are safeguards and checks and controls and balances in place to make sure that money's not being misspent, and that it's transparent. So I think there's some of the concerns, and any other concerns you could think of, Alex, that people might have about someone like an ISF provider managing their money.
I guess financial transparency is key, as you said. The fear of a provider doing it and not a local authority is that there's less of a neutral point of view. So hence that's why virtual wallets is great, because we remove the fact that we're not holding those funds. It's a way it's sat there, and we will diligently invoice for the work that we deliver and ensure that everyone else is paid for everything else. I think another concern can be, like, if we look at it at parents and, you know, what is going on, you know, that fear. When you look at a commission package, you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
When we're actually working side by side with an individual, there is flux and change, because it's real life. We're doing stuff. So it's how we communicate to the wider circle of support of what's going on. That's good record keeping. That alleviates, you know, concerns or you know, worries arising. It gives that really good real life picture of that person's development. That's how they should be support plans.
I think it's also about being, you know, much more contactable. You know, if you've got an issue with stuff, you know, you've got an issue with the plan or what's happening with your care, you know, I think that one of the good benefits to it as well is that we are much more readily available. We're working with these people, you know, day in, day out. So got regular contacts. We're aware of any issues that pop up, and you're not having to then you know, fight your way back to get hold of a social worker to get some of these issues dealt with. It can be quite quick and responsive. So, you know, again, I think that's a massive reassurance for parents over ISFs and things like that. And I guess one of the last things I wanted to sort of really touch on was about how someone would get one. How would they get an ISF? Well, I think in Essex, certainly it is about when you get up to your review point, or, you know, if you're looking to get support, it's about having those conversations early on with the social worker and saying, look, I've heard about this. Can you give me some information? How do I get this in place? And finding out those different options and weighing it up and saying, well, but where do we sit within this? Is this something that we want? Do we need to have that? And just having those open conversations, and making sure you get the answers, because sometimes you might find that not everyone knows that, or the social worker might not be aware fully of what it is. So it's about going back to them and being a little bit more forthright and saying to them, well, actually, look, I need to know about this. You know, can you find out? Can you share with us? Can you explain? And certainly, you know, I'm always contactable in Essex. If people have got questions, drop us an email or find out. And I think the other thing that I probably want to do as well is encourage any other organisations watching this video to perhaps get in touch with Alex or Chris, and you know, reach out to us all, because we do support each other. We're in Essex. We're trying to build a little bit of a network, if you like, because there are other domiciliary care companies and care homes that work together under ISFs, and we're trying to build a little bit of a support. And I know I've been invited down to other councils, or having a chat with recently Bournemouth, haven't we, Chris, talking about different things and just sharing that support really, and pushing it out and helping, because I think it's something that needs to grow and move forward. So yeah, so I think we've probably covered everything there. Thanks for both of your time. Yeah, thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cool.